act of sin and temptation has been depicted in literature and artwork throughout history with the use of cautionary tales, a story with a moral message warning of the consequences of certain actions, inactions, or character flaws. In the 4th century, the Church identified 7 deadly sins, also known as the capital vices, which were said to spur other sins and further immoral behavior. These sins are pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. 3 cautionary tales I'll be exploring today is The 7 Deadly Sins and the 4 Last Things by Hieronymus Bosch, Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti, and Midas's Touch, an ancient Greek myth. The 7 Deadly Sins and the 4 Last Things by Hieronymus Bosch, said to be created around 1500, is a painted work illustrating man's engagement with the 7 deadly vices, the 4 last stages the human soul goes through upon death, and the dire consequences of rejecting Christian values and being tempted by the devil. Hieronymus Bosch masterfully applies symbolism and literalism to illuminate the 7 deadly sins and the process of death. Bosch's use of composition in the work is highly symbolic. In the center of the artwork, which has a series of concentric circles depicting mankind's involvement with the 7 deadly sins, there is a smaller circle imitating the eye of God. In its pupil, we can observe Christ the Redeemer and the biblical scene of Christ rising from the grave, washing away the sins of man. The text below the scene reads, "Beware, beware, God sees." Bosch making this particular section the focal point of the artwork is intentional, as it acts as the warning. Bosch is cautioning the viewer about how God sees the 7 sins of mankind, and those who commit them will be punished. The repetition of the word beware, as well as the text displayed on the top banderole reading, "They are foolish, they don't understand. If they were wise, they would understand. They would know what would happen to them, they being mankind," further elucidates Bosch's patent warning about the consequences of sin. On the outside of a larger circle are 4 smaller circles with depictions of the 4 last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. In the circle portraying death, we can see a skeleton with a scythe symbolically representing death, and the angel and devil competing for the soul of the dying. The crucifix, the priest turned toward the audience, reminds the audience to repent, for death is inevitable. We can identify the consequence that Bosch is unearthing through the juxtaposition between his representation of heaven and the inferno of hell. The colour schemes between the two contrast with each other, with Bosch's portrayal of heaven delineating more ethereal colours of blue, white and gold, whilst hell has a darker chromatic colour scheme showing colours with connotations to death and suffering, such as black, orange and crimson. The 7 punishments shown in the hell section represent the unambiguous consequence of each sin. For example, the devil's holding a mirror to the woman, disclosed in the pride section in the middle of the painting, to show what sin consumed her during her life. In essence, Bosch is cautioning the viewer on the inevitable consequences of succumbing to sin and temptation, and to find religious morals and ideals in order to benefit one's innate desire, and that those who choose to engage in sin will be unforgivably punished in hell. Another text which has the theme of succumbing to sin and temptation and to find religious morals and ideals in order to benefit one's innate desire, however disregarding the unanticipated consequences of sin and immorality, is Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti, a narrative poem written in 1862. It explores the story of 2 sisters, Lizzie and Laura, and their brush with a sinister group of goblin merchants. Lizzie warns Laura not to succumb to the goblin's temptation and eat their fruits, like their friend Jenny, who tasted goblin's fruit, and as a result wasted away and died. However, Laura consumes the fruits anyway. The poem acts as a Victorian allegory against sexual temptation and chastity, and cautions the reader on the consequences of impurity, enticement, and to find religious principles through the symbolism of fruit, sexual temptation, and goblins, men tempting women into sexual deviance. Rossetti initiates the idea that the key to resisting temptation and desire is family and putting love and faith in God. Additionally, a cautionary tale which explores this idea is Midas's Touch, a Greek myth about a king named Midas who possessed great fortune and power. Midas is granted his wish to turn everything he touches into gold by the Greek god Dionysus, however quickly concludes that the golden touch is no blessing after turning his beloved daughter into a statue. The myth cautions the reader against the consequences of greed and of having an intense and selfish desire for something, such as material wealth, could cost one their ability to see what truly holds importance in life, like family. The cautionary tale suggests that mankind has an intrinsic trait to be greedy and want more than they have, and are deluded that material goods are the key to happiness and satisfaction, however, are unaware that they will never result to the overall contentment in one's life. In essence, the 7 deadly sins and the 4 last things, Goblin Market, and Midas's Touch are all cautionary tales which warn against succumbing to sin and temptation and define religious morals and ideals in order to benefit one's innate desire, however disregarding the unanticipated consequences of sin and immortality. Whilst these 3 narratives differ in medium perception and data creation, they all highlight the same warning, that sinning and simply engaging in immoral activity will lead to consequences. These texts allude how the root of all mankind's problems stem from sinning, thus act as a deterrent for audiences to define moral behaviour in favour of iniquity, making them valuable when studied collectively.